You'll see those snowflakes flying out there. Nothing terribly.
So that workers can make a free choice. Do you support the PRO Act?
Thank you, Ranking Member Sanders, and I appreciate the conversation. I support the American worker. President Trump.
Okay, I don't mean to be rude.
No,
we
you're
don't
not
have
rude.
a lot of time. I'm gathering that you no longer support the PRO Act, is what I hear. That you support the American worker. That's what everybody hears.
This is the biggest secret of 2024, and they don't want you to know about this.
If you get injured in an accident, even as just a passenger, no one knows this, but you can turn that accident into tens of thousands, or in my case, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So you were injured in a car accident and they just gave you a check for $245,000?
Yeah, it's definitely worth the free consultation. Filling out that 30-second quiz changed my life. Paid off my medical bills, my credit card debt, and I bought a new car.
If you have been injured in a car accident in the past 2 years, click the link on this video and take the 30-second quiz to see what your case is worth.
To a living wage.
Ranking Member Sanders, you know that that is an issue for Congress to determine and raising the minimum wage. As the Secretary of Labor, I cannot weigh in on that. That's determined by Congress. If they want to negotiate that, I will fully and fairly enforce the law as a Labor Secretary, if you all so choose, and give you whatever data possible to make that decision as members of Congress.
Well, I understand that Congress makes the law, but you have an opinion, and you will be the leading advocate for workers if you are confirmed. Question, if you were sitting where I'm sitting, would you vote to raise the minimum wage to a living wage?
Well, I'm not sitting where you're sitting hypothetically. I used to, but not any longer. But I do recognize that the minimum wage hasn't been raised since 2009, and the cost of living has gone up. But again, I cannot sit here and determine what that wage will be fully and fairly. I will enforce the law, but it will be up to Congress to determine, because that is not in the purview of the Secretary of Labor. For instance, in Oregon, I know that in Portland, Oregon, that the minimum wage is almost $16 an hour, and that might work for Portland, but that's not going to work for Grants Pass, Oregon. And I know that local communities, states determine what's best for their economy. What we don't want to do is shock the economy. But again, sitting here today, I cannot determine as Secretary of Labor if it should be.
Michelle, there's 3 months. In his second week in office, President Trump fired Gwynne Wilcox, a member of the National Labor Relations Board, leaving the NLRB without a quorum. And what that means right now, that if workers form a union, vote to form a union, and the company says, well, I think that was illegal, it's unfair, you slow up the process because there's nobody to go to. Do you believe that the firing of Ms. Wilcox was illegal? Which I do.
President Trump has a right to exercise his executive power, how he sees in consultation with.
Are you concerned that we do not have a functioning NLRB right now?
The NLRB is separate from the Department of Labor, but I
that.
do believe that the function of the NLRB is important. And I will always take that into consideration.
Are you concerned that we do not have a functioning NLRB now?
Well, again, I have not been read in with President Trump, but he has a right to exercise his executive power. And I do believe the NLRB has an important role independent of the Department of Labor. And I respect their position as an independent agency.
Thank you.
Senator Paul. Welcome. I enjoyed our meeting in our office. And I know you're aware of this, but about half the country has right to work laws. 26 states have them. When you compare right to work states with non-right to work states, you see that the right to work states have double the employment growth. If you look at manufacturing jobs, they have 5 times the manufacturing job growth. If you look at disposable income in the right to work states, about $3,000 more per individual for disposable income in the right to work states. The PRO Act wasn't just about organizing or enabling unions to organize, which they already have the right to do. The PRO Act was about overturning right to work laws in 26 states, half of the country. Most of these states would argue that this was would be a horrendous invasion of their prerogatives. The chairman asked you, and then the ranking member asked you, do you still support the PRO Act? The reason we want to know is this is a tremendous sort of invasion of the state's rights to decide these. This would be overturning the right to work laws in half of the country. Do you still support the PRO Act or don't you support the PRO Act?
Thank you, Senator Paul, and I appreciated our meeting as well. I thought it was quite what you shared with me is how important it is to you and your state, and I heard that from many members. The right to work is a fundamental tenet of labor laws, where states have a right to choose if they want to be a right to work state, and that should be
PRO
protected.
Act would have overturned that.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I signed on to the PRO Act because I was representing Oregon's 5th District, but I also signed on to the PRO Act because I wanted to be at that table and have those conversations. But I fully, fairly, and support states who want to protect their right to work. I have said that to every senator that I have visited.
So you
with.
no longer support the aspect of the PRO Act that would have overturned state right to work laws?
Yeah, there were so many parts.
That's a yes?
Yes, yes, sir.
No more questions.
Thank you, Senator.
With that, I go to Senator Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congresswoman Chavez-DeRemire, welcome.
Thank you, Senator.
The Trump administration is flagrantly violating the bipartisan agreements in our appropriations law by refusing to spend money that Congress in a bipartisan manner has passed for the American people. I've been hearing about it in my home state of Washington. I heard from an organization in Edmonds about whether or not it'll now be able to provide support for our veterans who are seeking educational and employment opportunities as they transition to civilian life. I heard from a workforce training program that operates statewide about whether they'll now be able to continue to pair workers with employers in the grocery industry. You should know that the chaos surrounding these funding freezes is causing real damage to people's lives. So I want to know, will you commit to following appropriations laws and the Impoundment Control Act?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I know we talked about this in your office as ranking member of appropriations, and I do respect the Appropriations Committee. As a former member of Congress, I think everyone in this room who's ever sat behind that dais can understand that. Again, the President of the United States has the power to determine what he's going to do through his executive power. I have not been confirmed. I have not been read into all that.
I'm asking you, will you
Yes.
follow the law?
I will always follow the
There
law
is
and the
an Impoundment
Constitution.
Control Act. Will you follow that law?
I will follow the law and the Constitution.
If you receive a directive to violate appropriations laws and withhold funding for workers, what will you do?
I do not believe the president is going to ask me to break the law. 100%.
Well, we have
not.
seen that across the board since he was put into office, where he is violating that law. So you will likely be asked, what will you do?
Well, it's a hypothetical. I have not talked to the president on this issue, and I
So
do
you
not
won't
believe.
commit to following the law if the president tells you to violate it?
I will commit to following the law, and I do not believe the president would ever ask me to break the law.
Well, okay. Last week, Elon Musk's DOJ team came to the Department of Labor and got access to the department's sensitive information system. Musk's companies have, as you must know, been repeatedly accused of violating labor laws, including workplace safety laws, discrimination laws, and wage and hour laws. In fact, OSHA has investigated Tesla and SpaceX. Now Elon can access those investigations about his companies because he's gone in and gotten those records. He can also access sensitive market moving data created by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That gives him tremendous power to manipulate quarterly jobs numbers and other important economic data, to say nothing of raising potential insider trading concerns. Just to make this abundantly clear, Elon Musk is now in a position to use his unelected role to use confidential government data to advance his own corporate interests while suppressing his competitors. Do you believe it is appropriate for someone with such blatant conflicts of interest to have access to those confidential economic and personal information?
Thank you, Senator Murray. If I have the honor of being confirmed by this committee and the full Senate, then I will have the opportunity. I have not stepped foot into the Department of Labor. And I
So,
understand.
well, my question
I
to you is, will
understand-
you protect the private information of people whose records you will be overseeing? Will you allow anyone, a billionaire or anyone else, to come in and access that?
Again, because I have not been confirmed. I only see the reports that everybody else has seen. I have not been read into that. If confirmed, I will, if confirmed.
You're not answering
I
the
will-
question.
If confirmed, I will support the Department of Labor. I think it's important to support the Department of Labor, but I
Will you
have not been.
Will you support the private information that you will be overseeing? Will you protect that?
I would protect the private information. On this issue, I have not been privy to those conversations with the president. I have seen that, and if confirmed, I commit to you that I will always protect the Department of Labor and those issues.
Well, let me ask you about child labor. It's an area that I've been very worried about, the rise of child labor violations. The Wage and Hour Division at the department has actually seen a 31% increase in minors employed in violation of child labor laws since 2019. In the last administration, the Wage and Hour Division at DOL and the Solicitor's Office worked really hard to secure some really important victories against some really egregious violators. How do you ensure Wage and Hour Division and the Solicitor's Office work together to enforce our child labor laws in this country?
Well, protecting child labor is abhorrent, and nobody should stand for child labor exploitation. I will do everything in my power within the Department of Labor to double down on the safety of all American workers that are exploited, but especially child labor. And I would love to work with your office. If this is an important issue, it should be important for everybody. Ensure that we protect against any child labor exploitation.
Senator Husted. Thank you, Chairman Cassidy. And it was a pleasure to visit with you, Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, in our meeting yesterday. I appreciate you taking the time to come visit and share your views across a variety of issues. I would like to talk a little bit today. I know that everyone in this hearing has talked about how they care about the American worker and how we make the world better for them. One of the ways we do that is we do more Made in America, which I know is very important to President Trump. Another way that we can consider this in terms of earning power of the American worker is the impact that illegal immigration has had on undermining their ability to earn higher wages. And I'm just interested in your opinion about whether or not you think the influx of millions of people into this country who many of them are here illegally is undermining the earning power of the American worker.
Well, certainly we want to protect the American worker, and Made in America is important to the President of the United States. I couldn't be more proud to support the America First agenda for exactly that reason. We certainly want to make sure that we're focused on growing this economy. That is the conversation that I had with the president on how can we bring the American worker to be the pinnacle of every conversation that we have and supporting them and growing this economy. So yes, the influx of the mass immigration that we've seen over the last 4 years has hurt the American worker, and we want to make sure that we're supporting President Trump in his endeavor to support the American worker at all costs.
Great, thank you. Let's talk about another aspect of Made in America. If we're going to make more things in America and we're going to compete on price so that we don't have inflation, we're obviously going to need to create more productivity. Productivity comes from technology in the workplace. As we integrate technology in the workplace throughout time, it has always been a subject of conversation, consternation, but it is inevitable that technology will advance and we will have to compete. I would like for you to talk about your thoughts on the role of technology in the workplace, because we want to make jobs safer. We want to make them more rewarding, which technology can do. We also know that in creating productivity, it can create profits for business. And we want to make sure that the reward of that innovation is given to both the worker and the business in terms of who benefits from the introduction of that technology. Talk about the role of technology in the workplace as it relates to labor and how we do more made in America with these new innovations.
Thank you, Senator Hugh. Said we had this conversation yesterday, and how important that you've been involved from all levels representing your states. And I've talked to many of the senators on this issue, and it is a consternation about, will that replace, the American worker? I would say, got to be for growth, because it's going to happen. And what we don't want is for other countries to get ahead of the game, ahead of America. So how we can work together with the American workforce, the employers and the employees, and how we can work with Congress to determine what that looks like. But if there is profitability in there and we can support the American worker, and then we can have those American workers upskilled and reskilled, and this is going to be great for America to grow that economy and then share in that profit with the employees that are supporting. I think that's the key. The president and I had a conversation specifically on building that bridge between the employer and the employee, and labor and business, all of that. And if we grow this economy, we can do to bigger and better things, and everybody can live that American dream, as you mentioned. So I look forward to really diving in as the Department of Labor and giving the resources, not only to those businesses, but not only to those employees, but to members of Congress who can take this story back to their states and know that the Department of Labor, and as me as a leader, is going to work on their behalf.
And a final component of that is that many Americans can have higher paying jobs if they have the right kind of skills. They don't need to go to college. They can get there through apprenticeships. Talk about how we can expand apprenticeships and make sure that we're helping the American workforce get the skills they need to compete, be more productive, and help America win.
And one of President Trump's number one focus is the expanded apprenticeships, is the investment in apprenticeships, making sure that we have the skilled workforce. I know as a former mayor and working with business owners and working with community colleges, that not everybody's going to get that four-year degree. We have to pay attention that they have the skills that they need, that they can connect right to the business owners in their communities and reinforce that, and not have to pick up and walk away. There's nothing that I want more than for business and employers and the education departments to work together and really have a skilled workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, when we met, you expressed your strong support for registered apprenticeship. So I want to dig a little bit deeper on that last question you were asked. That was reassuring to hear, particularly in light of the first Trump administration's effort to fund non-registered apprenticeships, or IRAPs as they're called. You also said that you had not yet had an opportunity to talk with the president about policy at the time we met. Have you had the opportunity to talk with the president about your about registered apprenticeships? And if so, has that changed your position?
No, thank you, Senator, on that issue. It is so important on the registered apprenticeships, and really investing and even doubling down on that. I know in the first administration, and I haven't talked to the president on the first administration's policies compared to now on apprenticeship from the last administration. But I think there's a lot to learn from what happened in the first administration, and the successes and not successes. But right now we're focused on the registered apprenticeships, growing those, investing in those, and making sure that those are adhered to.
Thank you. I want to.
All right, and we have been listening in live to the Senate hearing for Labor Secretary nominee Lori Chavez-DeRemer, and she is President Trump's choice to lead the Department of Labor. She served as the U.S. representative for Oregon's 5th congressional district from 2023 to 2025, and she is a pro-union Republican. You could hear members of the Senate there asking her about her stance with that as well. We're going to go away for a 2-minute break. We'll head back to that on the other side. You're watching Live Now from Fox. And welcome in here to Live Now from Fox. If you are just joining us, we have been following this Senate confirmation hearing for a Labor Secretary nominee, Lori Chavez-DeRemer. And you can see this code on the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to watch this in full, you can scan that QR code. We are airing this stream in full on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it uninterrupted in case we have to pivot here for breaking news or take a commercial break. But for right now, we are going to head back to that live.
Can me that this important work will continue under the Department of Labor, at the Department of Labor under your leadership, yes or no?
Yes.
Can you confirm that information under the Department of Labor's wage and hour division on their website will remain up to date, publicly accessible, and comprehensive like it is today? Yes or no?
Again, I have not been at the Department of Labor. I have not, but I look forward to working with agency heads and making sure that people have the information that they need.
All right, one last question. The Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations Grant Program.
Senator Baldwin, time's expired.
All right, I will submit that for.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, we served together in the House and worked together on the House Education and Workforce Committee, where you were a leader. You worked on many of the very issues that you are testifying about today. You are enormously qualified for this position, and I'm proud to support you. But can you explain to us for a moment what it means to you to put American workers first in this golden age of America's economy?
Thank you, Senator. Well, it's important to me, as was mentioned, the American worker. But we have to make sure that the American worker is being fortified with not only the skills that they need in order to answer the call, but people are looking for the American dream. People are wanting to have the skills to work in whatever they determine that to be. Again, we're seeing it's not the 4-year university always, it's the 2-year, it's the certificate base, it's answering the call so they can have mortgage paying jobs for their families and understand that we're going to protect their benefits and their rights and safety in the workplace. The Department of Labor is sole focus is to make sure that we are protecting the wage earner, that we are helping the job seekers who are out there looking and really reinvigorating the job seekers who have decided that they don't want to look any further, and then protecting those retirees. As member of Education and Workforce and working together. Workforce investment, workforce development, I think is going to be key for all of our respective states. This shouldn't be a party issue. I've said this over and over again. That's why I've always worked across the aisle, because the American worker, we don't know what their party is, but we know that it matters to them to protect their families. I know how important my family's jobs were for us growing up. And I know how important it was for my husband and I to build that business for our children and soon to be grandchild. So I look forward to continuing down that road and always keeping that American worker at the pinnacle. And President Trump has said the same thing. And we align on this issue. The American worker,
We've got passion, we've got determination. And if we set our sights on something, you better believe it's happening. We always felt like our content was all about entertainment and being fun, but there was also this, sort of professional business side. One of the things that we knew was basically essential was getting our own website, so people would actually see a proper official group who mean business and who can deliver. And we always had this vision of bringing things into existence that previously had never been seen. This is the world's largest act. We bounced a plane, a boat and a car, and it was wild. So today, how ridiculous, have 50 million followers? We're in the billions of views. Tens of billions. That's pretty good. I don't know all the things that we're going to get to do in the next year or 5 years, but if we can do this as a job, anything's possible.
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on Wix.
Most Planet Fitness clubs are open 24 hours, so you can work out whenever.
We're coming in early. Staying late.
Whatever works for you.
Save $28 or more when you join for just $1 down, $15 a month. Cancel anytime. Deal ends February 28th.
This new direction of bringing labor and business and support is to uplift all Americans. And this is first and foremost on the president's mind.
Back in November, when President Biden was still in office, his Labor Department reported a 31% increase over the last 5 years of illegal child labor in America, a direct result of open borders. And I wonder, have you thought about what the Labor Department or President Trump and your leadership can do to save those kids who are in our country being illegally exploited for work in America?
Well, I have not had a conversation specific to that topic, but I know how important it is to protect well, first of all, children who have no fault of their own are being exploited. We never want to exploit our children. Again, as I mentioned, it's abhorrent that we would ever in this country choose to do so. So we will make sure that our workers are safe. We will make sure that our children are safe, and that we will make sure that we are heading in the right direction to protect our businesses and protect our workers and never exploit our children. We'll double down at the Department of Labor if there's any bad actors doing so.
The Labor Department is responsible for combating human trafficking
That's
and
right.
forced labor under the Fair Labor Standards Act. And the Biden administration completely ignored these kids that came into that were brought here illegally and being exploited. And I know that's something that you'll take very seriously and work on. I look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator.
I yield back.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your willingness to serve and coming before this committee. I think Senator Murray's questions were really important regarding the security of data and sensitive information at the Department of Labor. And so I just want to drill down and maybe make a finer point here. Elon Musk is right now the subject of several OSHA investigations. Multiple companies are subject of multiple investigations. His rocket company has an injury rate that's about 9 times higher than the industry average. I heard you say that you're going to protect data privacy, but let me just ask once again the very specific question. Will you commit to denying access to Elon Musk or any of his representatives to information about labor violations at OSHA or any other information about labor violation investigations at the Department of Labor?
Thank you, Senator. On this same issue, committing to the privacy. Again, I know that for most listening to this, it seems as though when we're trying to answer these questions, but I have not been in these conversations, as I'm not confirmed. I only see what has happened possibly on the news and so forth. The president has the executive power to have his coalition of advisors and determine what's best for the American people. He made a promise to the American people that he was going to do these things and check into what is happening. Other than that, I have not been read in on any of this. And if confirmed, I commit to taking a deeper look and working with your office and any other office on this issue. But at this point, again,
This one feels pretty simple, right? I mean, this is an individual who owns companies that have existing investigations.
Mm-hmm.
He has a direct interest in getting information about the seriousness of those investigations. He has interest in getting information about investigations against his competitors. It seems like a pretty simple commitment to make, to say, I am not going to give any private company exclusive access to information about open investigations against them or their competitors. I mean, why can't you just make that commitment to us?
well, again, the president has the executive power to exercise it as he sees fit. I am not the president of the United States. I work for the president of the United States if confirmed, and I will serve at the pleasure of the president on this issue. Again, I have not been into the Department of Labor, and so I will commit to working with your office. I'll commit to coming back as soon as if confirmed, and I'm in the Department of Labor, coming back and answering those questions to this committee wholeheartedly. I will commit to that.
You have the ability to disagree with the president. You certainly serve at his pleasure, but that doesn't mean that you have to take actions that you believe to be unethical. If the president asks you to give access to information to benefit a friend of his who has pending investigations, you wouldn't say no?
Well, the president, I think in building his team, a formidable team, to determine that, I don't think is expecting yes men and women. We are going to be advisors to the president, and I would talk to the president. But on this issue, I'm not an attorney. I would certainly consult with the Department of Labor solicitors. I would certainly consult with the White House and their attorneys. But until I am confirmed and in the Department of Labor, I would not be able to say specific to this without having the full picture before that.
I don't think you need to be an attorney to understand that giving access to a company to sensitive data about labor violations at their company or to competitors' companies is deeply unethical. Let me ask you another question. Both SpaceX and Amazon have filed suits against the NLRB, contesting its constitutionality. It's a pretty extreme argument saying that the NLRB is actually unconstitutional. I know you were asked earlier about the firing of one of the members. Do you believe that the NLRB is constitutional?
I believe the NLRB definitely has its authority, and I respect that authority. I know you mentioned, or I mentioned, that I'm not an attorney. That being said, it looks like the courts are dealing with that. But what I respect is the fact that it is separate, independent agency, and I think it has a role to play, and I respect that. And as the Department of Labor Secretary have confirmed, I will take that very seriously.
But do you believe that it's constitutional?
Yeah, I believe that
Well, you can answer that question real fast.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely believe that the NLRB is an important agency, independent. And I will work with the NLRB as we, have very different jurisdictions, but we often overlap. And so I think it's important to recognize that is an important agency, independent, and so forth.
Senator Moody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy. Hello, congratulations on your nomination. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
I wanted to follow up on something my colleague, Senator Banks, brought up, and you mentioned that you had not had a conversation about this, but I'm hopeful that you have paid attention to what's been going on and studied what's been happening to so many children throughout our nation, especially over the last 4 years. It is common knowledge now, it is not a political opinion, that under the Biden administration, hundreds of thousands of minor children flooded into our country. Many were forced into labor trafficking, working many hours a day, even undercutting American wages, but to the detriment of many of these children. Some were injured, some died. It was heartbreaking. As a mother of a child that is around the same age that some of these children were forced into this labor, I find it appalling that more people were not speaking out about this, and certainly unacceptable that we had an administration that was not talking about this every single day when these horrors were taking place in our own country. Florida was so upset about it, we kept asking routinely for more information from the administration so that we could monitor what children were in our state and care for them and account for them. We even launched a grand jury investigation. I just wanted to quote for you what that grand jury found. And again, this is community members, not politically driven. The Biden administration forced migration, sale, and abuse of foreign children. This process exposed children to horrifying health conditions, constant criminal threat, labor and sex trafficking, robbery, rape, and other experiences not done justice by mere words. And the challenging part here is, as we've uncovered more and more instances of this, it appeared that the Department of Labor was not engaging and expecting the same type of transparency that many of the states were, even though the Department of Labor had the responsibility and authority to enforce some of this stuff. And when we tried to get Biden administration representatives to come and testify and give us information and provide documents, we were repeatedly obstructed from doing that. And in fact, they responded to one of our requests that they show up by saying the state had failed to show how it was in the interest of the agency, when all we were seeking to do was to fight in the interests of the tens of thousands of lost children. And so I will ask you, if you are given this enormous responsibility, do you commit to doing everything in your power to enforcing the child labor laws and working with the states that so desperately want to protect the children in their states, that believe they have the responsibility and the ability to do that?
100%, Senator. As I mentioned, what has happened over the last 4 years has been horrendous. It is not something the United States should stand for. And again, it is not a political issue. This is protecting children. And we should not ever allow that to happen in this country. And I 100% commit to you that I will work with you, your office, and any other office in order to protect those children and understand that we should never accept this in the United States.
There was some words recently promoted in a memo by President Trump and his administration, radical transparency. And I think that is essential in moving forward from these agencies so that the people understand what is taking place in their country under their noses, because we know any power that rests in this government rest with the consent of the governed. And I think as we are waking up to what has been happening, many are saying we never gave that consent. And we as a Congress need to hold the agencies accountable to that. I want to now direct your attention to right to work laws in states that have chosen to pass right to work laws, like the state of Florida. We passed legislation to ensure that, for example, dues could not be forced out of people's paychecks. That was very important within our state. And when the Department of Labor saw that under the last administration, they sought to threat to withhold funding from the state of Florida when we promoted our own policies to ensure reasonable collective bargaining and right to work laws. We brought suit. I fought that in court. That is still pending. It is on appeal right now. Do I have your word that you will look at that, dig in on that, determine if those threats were indeed justified, and if not, work with the state of Florida to resolve that?
Yes. While it is in litigation, I can't comment on the actual litigation. I do look forward, if confirmed, to working with your office and taking a hard look at that and respecting what the state of Florida is doing with their right to work laws.
And put simply, do you respect the ability of the states to enact policy in the benefit of our own states?
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you to Representative Chavez-DeRemer for the good discussion we had about a month ago. You said you respect the National Labor Relations Board and want to work together with it, though they are independent. The National Labor Relations Board was created by statute, and it's the law of the land, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it was created pursuant to the National Labor Relations Act, which was also a statute and is the law of the land, correct?
Yes, sir.
Currently, the NLRB lacks a quorum because of actions of President Trump. The legality of his removal of an NLRB member is being contested in court, but the NLRB should have a quorum, shouldn't it?
Well, in order to do business, I suppose, yes.
No, but so that your opinion is a president of either party or a Congress of either party should assure that the National Labor Relations Board has a quorum, correct?
Yes.
Because in the absence of a quorum, it can't do its job, correct?
That would be on its face, yes.
The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, do you believe in the notion that workers should have equal opportunities?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you believe in the notion that workers should have equal employment opportunities?
Absolutely.
The EEOC is an independent agency, but it deals with workers, and you said you want to put workers first. The EEOC right now lacks a quorum. The EEOC was created by statute, and it's the law of the land, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever taken the position as a congresswoman that either the NLRB or the EEOC should be defunded or eliminated?
No, not that I recall.
So since the EEOC is the law of the land and it's important that workers have equal employment opportunities, the EEOC should have a quorum to operate, correct?
Yes.
Because of actions of the president, the EEOC currently has no quorum and cannot operate to protect equal employment opportunities. But you would agree with me, similar to the discussion we had about the NLRB, that it being the law of the land, any president of either party and any Congress of either party should ensure that the EEOC has a quorum so it can protect workers, correct?
Yes.
The Department of Labor has some specific programs designed to benefit veterans. There's a couple of programs within the DOL focused on veterans' employment needs. Should you be confirmed, would you take those obligations to watch out for American veterans seriously?
Absolutely.
If you became aware that an employer, a major employer, was taking actions that disproportionately negatively affected veterans, would that concern you?
Yes.
The mass firing that President Trump is doing within the federal government right now is hitting veterans very, very hard. The civilian workforce is about 3% veteran. The federal workforce is 30% veteran. And veteran workers are also disproportionately probationary employees. The actions thus far taken by this administration are punishing American veterans badly. I live in one of the states that has the highest per capita representation of veterans. We're seeing people laid off at VA clinics. I have 2 VA clinics that are supposed to open in the next couple of months whose opening is jeopardized because of the mass firings. And even outside of the VA, the disproportionate effect of the firings to this point fall hard upon veterans. I'm happy to hear that you will take it seriously if any major employer in this country disproportionately punishes veterans. Do you know what a
And we were just listening in there to Senator Tim Kaine as he was questioning former Representative Lori Chavez DeRemer as she is President Donald Trump's choice to lead the Department of Labor. This is her nomination hearing, and she is a pro-union Republican. So you've been hearing a lot of questions today directed towards unions as we have continued to listen into this conversation. We are going to go away for our first 2-minute break of the hour here on Live Now from Fox. When we come back, we'll head right back to that hearing. Stay with us. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. We do have some breaking news we want to take you out to as we are hearing from President Donald Trump releasing a statement on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He posted to his Truth Social account, and this is a pretty lengthy quote, so we are going to pull it up 2 pieces at a time. So let's start with this. He is saying this again on the Ukrainian president, saying, quote, "Think of it. A modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelensky, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed, while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization and that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us? We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation." On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money we sent him is, quote, "missing." He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. I am going to pull up that next part of the quote right now. "A dictator without elections, Zelensky better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something I'll admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered and millions have unnecessarily died." And so it continues. That just into our newsroom here from President Trump as he is issuing this statement. I am going to give you a live look at the White House right now because this is following a series of events here after Ukrainian President Zelensky accused President Trump today of living in a Russian-made, quote, disinformation space. He pointed comments that risked further souring relations with Washington as Trump pushes for an end to this war. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin said he would like to meet with Trump a day after senior American and Russian officials held talks that were partially aimed at preparing for that. Zelensky said he, quote, would like Trump's team to be more truthful in his first response to a series of claims that Trump made the previous day, including suggesting that Kyiv was to blame for the war, which enters its 4th year next week. The comments from Trump and Zelensky were a back and forth between the leaders of these two countries that have been allies in recent years under President Biden, as the U.S. provided crucial military equipment to Kyiv to fend off the invasion and used its political weight to defend Ukraine and isolate Russia. on the world stage. But the latest here, as this is rapidly developing, the Trump administration has started charting a new course, so to speak, reaching out to Russia and pushing for a peace deal. Senior officials from both countries held talks yesterday to discuss improving ties, negotiating an end to the war, and potentially preparing a meeting between Trump and Putin after years of frosty relations, we could call it. So that is the latest here as we are getting this into our newsroom. That statement from President Trump, pretty lengthy there on Truth Social. Of course, all of this coming after these increased peace talks between Russia and Ukraine that we have been showing you here on Live Now from Fox. Any more on this? Of course, we will bring it to you as we always do. In the meantime, I did want to head back live to Washington, D.C. right now. As I pull up for you, we were listening in here. As you can see, let me pull down that audio really quickly. But this is the Senate confirmation nomination hearing, excuse me, not the confirmation, the nomination hearing for Lori Chavez DeRemer, former U.S. representative, as she is President Trump's pick to be the Secretary of Labor. Let's continue listening into this conversation.
The State Department was planning to give Tesla a $400 million contract for armored vehicles. Now we find that Elon Musk has access to the Department of Transportation records and data systems when in fact he's being investigated by DOT because of multiple inquiries into the safety of Tesla vehicles and the deaths they may have caused. Then we find out that he's got access to the Department of Labor information. He's got programmers with him when we know that he's being investigated by the Department of Labor. So it seems like Mr. Musk is getting a big payback from Mr. Trump right in the first month of this administration, and that concerns us greatly. Now, I did want to turn to a couple of issues that you and I talked about. We have a shared interest in increasing access to apprenticeship and workforce training, and there's been real bipartisan focus on that. If confirmed, will you expand these programs, and how will you prioritize rural communities in this effort? Because getting apprenticeship programs in rural communities to fit the actual economy and workforce needs in those rural communities is a pretty unique thing. And I'd just like your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you, Senator. And I enjoyed our conversation as well. Again, a lot of this information that I experience comes from being a former mayor.
Yeah.
And then having the experience as a member of Congress as well to understand how the laws are made. But in the rural areas, oftentimes forgotten. It's a forgotten parts of a lot of our states. One of the things we talked about is the hubs. And I think I talked about that with Senator Hickenlooper as well. And knowing that there are programs that are going to skill the workforce in those rural communities. And for instance, an example in Oregon, one of the hubs I think I mentioned to you and Senator Hickenlooper was, it's a real direct, while it's not an apprenticeship program, until we can fortify or work toward possibly what that looks like in other parts of certain industries. We talked, I think, about the healthcare industry specifically, is working with our community colleges and our local technical colleges to have those certificate based so that we have that workforce right in those communities. And when we take that information from our businesses and we kind of back into degrees for our students in order to do that. But I look forward to working on a bipartisan level to really fortify those apprenticeship programs so that we can have that skilled workforce.
Well, I would look forward to working in a bipartisan way on that. One of the things we could do is to pass the bipartisan bicameral reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that we agreed to last Congress. So that's an important way we could move forward. With 2.6 million workplace injuries and illnesses reported annually, we have to do more to protect the health and safety of our workers. Yet workers still have to fight for common sense protections like air conditioning for delivery drivers during the scorching heat of the summer and properly fitting protective equipment for construction workers. If confirmed, how will you coordinate and prioritize workforce safety across all of DOL's agencies?
Oh, thank you, Senator. One of, again, the remits for the Department of Labor is to protect the workplace, make sure that they're free of hazard, make sure that we're protecting the American worker. Nobody expects to go to work in the morning and be unsafe or be hurt. So it will be the role to work with the experts in all of the departments across the Department of Labor to make sure that we're honoring the mission of the Department of Labor.
And I would appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that you rightly respected the expertise of some of our federal workforce there because they know a lot about workplace safety, and I don't want them to be subject to these mass layoffs we're seeing. I will submit for the record a question about paid leave. We were able to expand it for federal workers under President Trump's first term. I'd appreciate your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator.
Senator Hassan. And Senator Mullen, I apologize if you snuck in just before Senator Collins left, but Senator Mullen.
Give me time to get my head in place. Thank you, Chairman. And I just kind of want to point out some interesting things that's going on. The senator from New Hampshire was complaining about a contract that was awarded by the Biden administration, and somehow you're tying it to the Trump administration for Tesla. I don't actually know how those work. I mean, you know as good as I do, that was a contract that was given by the Biden administration, or that was looking to be given by the administration, not the Trump administration, and somehow that's a conflict of interest. And then when we start talking about that, you're concerned about Mark and Jeff and Elon, it wasn't too long ago, you guys were
Overpaying for your phone plan? That's so last year. Mobile helps you save money in 2025. Cause hey, it's time to stop overspending on your phone bill. With Tello, you'll enjoy forever flexible options and never-ending savings all year long. Go for a basic phone plan under $10 a month or pick a higher data plan. They all come with great nationwide coverage, international calls, and friendly customer service. Plus, you can even bring your phone and keep your number. Start saving and switch to Tello today.
went. What happened to the conclusion? Yet what we do is we spend all of our time complaining and making reckless accusations about something that's absolutely false. And when you guys don't want to hear it, you guys just accuse everybody else of being a criminal and for some reason being compromised. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It's the same thing we heard in 2017, and yet you guys are just recycling. You guys are doing nothing but trying to stir up your base by fear when it's absolutely 100% wrong and shouldn't even exist. Now, with my rant over, I'd like to turn back to Lori and ask you a question. You know, you're very uniquely positioned. I made that clear when I was introducing you. Coming from a very blue state and being a Republican, that's very heavily union, and you've been backed by the union. You have the support of a new coalition that President Trump has brought together.
That's right.
What role do you think you play in this new coalition?
Thank you, Senator Mullen. For one, thank you again for being here today and introducing me. But on this question, building the bridge, and I think that this is the new direction. 77,300,000 Americans voted for President Trump. We know that the American worker, wherever they are on the continuum, if it's organized labor, if it's employees, if it's employers, they supported and gave the president a mandate. He won 312 electoral votes. He won all the swing states, and he did have a mandate. But in that mandate, what's unique about this time is the fact that he included the American worker of being first. He's not talking about, he's talking about the men and women who build this country. That's the focus. And I believe that the president nominated me to bring my experience, not only as a mayor, not as a business owner, but because I did garner labor support. The president and I align in this issue, that if we focus on the American worker, despite the politics that is going to come up sometimes, we're not going to agree on everything, but we can agree that we are at a pivotal moment in this history to capitalize and support the American worker, and that everyone can achieve the American dream. I know how important that was for my family. I know how important that is to all your constituents, and I want to bring people to the table. And when they're at that table, I want them to stay at that table, because I know it sometimes they're going to disagree. But it is not to put the thumb on the scale. It is not to weigh in support on your side. It's to keep them at that table till they determine that they can solve the issues, just like you and Sean O'Brien. This is important to the president. It's important to me. He asked me to be an extension on his team, a formidable team, where we won't forget that. And I won't forget that. I'll work hard every day to be the leader that this country deserves at the Department of Labor to carry on that message for the president.
One of President Trump's main focus was bringing jobs back through manufacturing. In fact, the American First agenda was all about protecting American workers. How do you plan on working uniquely with both sides to bring manufacturing back to the United States?
Well, again, thank you for this question, because it is where we have been lacking. We have seen communities be decimated, small rural communities where, Oregon is a timber industry, and they have been decimated over the last 15, 20 years. We have to bring those back so we can build up our communities. I look forward to investing in the workforce. Again, it was mentioned WEO, which is a bipartisan effort. And as a member of Ed and Workforce, I was proud to honor that. And if President Trump wants to bring that forward, I look to working with all of your offices for that workforce investments to build up those jobs, to reinvest in those manufacturing jobs.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you,
yield back.
Senator.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Congresswoman, for coming on out and talking to us. In your opening statement, your written testimony, you talked about putting American workers first as the priority here, and I appreciate that. I think a lot of us agree with that. I guess I just want to ask you, because you talked about the vision that you have for that should be a vision for our country. So I guess I wanted to ask you to sort of expand on that vision. Is $7.25 an hour, is that enough to live on in America in the year 2025?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I know Ranking Member Sanders asked the same question. I recognize that it hasn't been changed, the minimum wage.
I guess I'm just asking you, do you think that's enough for a worker to live on? I'm just trying to get a sense of your vision for what the standard of life for an American worker is.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, for every state, for every community, again, I mentioned Oregon. What happens in Portland doesn't happen in Grants Pass. It certainly doesn't happen.
I understand that about Oregon, but I guess I would ask you, what is $7.25 an hour? That is what in an annual term? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh,
it's not a math question.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get a sense of it. So it's about $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
So I guess I just want to ask you, do you think that there is a state in this country where someone can live comfortably on their own for $15,000?
Do you hear that? The pure panic of a cyber attack. The endless alerts of component failure and power loss. Can you hear it? Neither can we.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, CJ, what's up?
Well, I have to ask.
Yes, CJ, I'm expecting.
Expecting what?
A baby?
Oh, everyone can see that. Actually, I was going to ask if you saw the crazy good deals we've got going on.
Seriously?
Right now, you can save on every new vehicle during the President's Day sales event going on now. And beat that Chrysler Jeep.
Where our prices can't be beat. Only at the Henderson Valley Auto Mall.
I will come out and visit every state's and understand what's important to them and tell that story, not only to the president, but also work with members of Congress. And if you all see fit, I will fully and fairly enforce the minimum wage laws that you all see fit and work together. I know, again,
it needs to be a conversation between us here. I mean, it's not just on us. You're going to be somebody who's supposed to be fighting for the American worker. Is 50% of someone's salary too high in terms of what goes towards housing?
Well, again, depending on what the salary is, people can determine that. I mean, if I had to take a guess, you're wanting me to say yes or no. It's hard to guess on what people want to spend on their housing, but I do want to help the American worker. I want them to make enough money. I want them to give them the opportunities, and I want to work with Congress on this issue because it is important. This is a sensitive issue. We hear about it all the time. You know that.
It's as I said, the top issue. And I'll say that, when it comes to the lowest median rents that we see in this country right now, it's around $850, $900 a month, which is at around $10,000 a month. And these are in some of the states where, again, the minimum wage is $15,000 a year. So talking about 2/3 of their salaries. When it comes to paid leave, I mean, I know a colleague of mine was going to raise this. We were able to move forward on government employees. I wanted to just get a sense, do you believe that all American workers are entitled to paid leave?
Again, we don't have a federal paid leave.
Should we?
Well, that again, I know as a
But I'm
Department
just
of
trying to
Labor-
get a sense of your vision. I get it. You're not
I know.
a lawmaker anymore, but like, I'm just trying to get a sense of what you're going to be fighting for. What's your vision for the American
Yeah.
worker?
Well, my vision for the American worker is to achieve the American dream.
I
they
understand
have
that,
the
but is part of the
opportunities.
American dream paid leave for all workers?
Well, again, I cannot commit to you today that I would say 100% paid leave across the board is something that should be taken up by the federal government. Independent of states, state of Oregon, again, they choose to do that respective of their states. I want people to have the opportunities to keep more of their hard-earned dollars. I know the president, again, is in line with the America First agenda to have those freedoms, to keep those hard-earned dollars that they earn. And we want to make the most prosperous opportunities available for them to earn the most based on what they are skilled to do, and offer them the development and the skills that they can to earn that opportunity. I want this more than anything.
Yeah, and look, I want it too, and that's why, if confirmed, I want to work with you on this.
Absolutely.
But I'll just tell you, like, when I talk to workers back in New Jersey, they say it feels like death from a thousand cuts right now. There's housing, there's healthcare, there's so many other things. They're working 2 to 3 jobs just to be able to get by. They're not asking for the moon. They're just asking to be able to live a life of dignity and decency. And I hope that we can at least be able to stand up and say that that's what we're going to fight for. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator.
Kim. Senator Tuberville.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Coach.
Let's beat a dead horse here. Right to work state, Alabama. My constituents at home want to know that, are you going to try to change our status as right to work?
I respect the fact that you are from a right to work state, and I respect the fact that you can continue to be a right to work state.
Thank you. Back when we had the PRO Act, I offered an amendment that would require authorization from employees in order for any kind of dues, fees, or assessments to be used towards a political campaign by the union bosses. It failed. Are you for that? How would you handle that? Dues going from a union, paid in a political contribution from employees that are not asked, can we use your money?
So you're saying they pay their dues, it's used for a political contribution without their knowledge?
Right.
Yeah, well, again, that's not something that I think they should be aware of where their dues are going.
Yeah, okay. Just asking.
Yeah.
Voted for the PRO Act. I was just asking.
I didn't, Senator, if I could correct the record, I did not vote for the PRO Act. I put my name on this. We did not have a vote on the PRO Act. So I just wanted to correct the record on that.
All right. We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. My constituents want to know, you worked in Planned Parenthood years and years ago. You pro-life or pro-choice?
I am supportive of the president's agenda. I have 100% pro-life voting record in Congress, and I will continue to support the America First agenda, which we know includes life.
Good answer. All right. Talk to me about legal immigration. In my state, we have the most engineers in the country, in the state of Alabama, because of NASA and defense contractors and all those things. We're running short on a lot of engineers, high-tech people that are well-trained in our country. For some reason, we're running short because big tech is growing. Where do you stand on legal immigration? Your thoughts?
Well, I'm supportive of legal immigration only. I mean, I don't see another way around it. But you're talking about, are you referring to the H-1 visa program?
Anything to do with high tech, anything to do with engineers, that, eventually we're going to have to allow more people to come, but not to tear down the structure of young men and women having a chance to make a better living because they spent 4 or 5 years at a university and have to pay their bills.
No, I appreciate that so much that you brought this up. Certainly we never want to replace the American worker. We want to make sure that we're investing in the American worker and they have the skills needed for the high-tech industry, as we see moving forward through a lot of our respective states. On the visitor's visa, on the H-1B, there's been conversation about in the immediacy. I've heard that from many of the senators. It's about today, what happens today and tomorrow. I commit to you to working again with testing the market. That's the Department of Labor's remit, is to test the market and seeing where we need the guest worker program. Once we've exhausted all other programs and making sure that we're out there, then work with the Department of Homeland and certainly the Department of State. And if we have to administer more, but that's going to be certainly Congress will determine it, and then I'll work with those interagencies as well. And I would love to work with your office on that specifically.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not going to put you under a gun on this question. You probably don't know a lot about it. A lot of people in this room know a lot about it. NIL, name, image, and likeness. It is a disaster. And we're going to have to do something in your tenure to help young men and women understand, the situation that we're in, because we're going to start losing Title IX. We got a young man that just signed an $8 million contract, and he's 20 years old, and it's out of control. So the next time you come, hopefully we can have a hearing on what we call name, image, and likeness. I'm all for kids making money, but it is workforce. It needs to be changed. It needs to be regulated to a point where, all men and women, young men and women, can have a chance to make money. So just to bring that to light, but that will be under your purview in the very near future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And next would be.
All right, so we are going to go to a quick 2-minute commercial break in between speakers here. We've been listening into the Senate hearing for Labor Secretary nominee Lori Chavez DeRemer. She's a former U.S. representative, and we are going to continue that conversation after this break. Really quickly, though, I did also want to give you a live look at something going on right now, as well as we continue to follow the latest with New York City Mayor Eric Adams. This is a protest happening right now, and this comes ahead of the New York City mayor appearing in court later today, as he's going to face a judge over his corruption charges. And we brought you that breaking news yesterday on Live Now from Fox after U.S. District Judge Dale Ho, who is an appointee of Democratic former President Joe Biden, ordered the parties to appear at a hearing. That all set to start at 2 p.m. Eastern time today. And if we get anything on that, we will bring it to you here on Live Now from Fox. But I did just want to give you a live look at this image, at this protest happening right now. We are going to go away for that break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us. And welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I do want to take you back out live to Washington, D.C. right now, as we've been listening into the Senate hearing for Labor Secretary nominee Lori Chavez DeRemer.
Technically, but to enforcing that and really investing in the workforce specific to high tech, because we know we're going to need those jobs. And so this is an important issue, I would think, to everybody sitting up here, that they're a part of the workforce and respective in every state.
I know in our conversation, we talked about making sure that labor as well as industry are present at the table when we make these big policy decisions, when we do legislation. One of the things that I will be focusing on and introducing legislation on is an accelerator, the Advanced Research Projects Agency of the Department of Labor, ARPA-L. Is similar to what we've done for health with ARPA-H, with defense for DARPA, which gave us groundbreaking technologies like the internet and Siri. And so hope to work with you on these as well. And again, let's make sure that we focus on all workers. That includes those folks that are being fired, laid off, and in a lot of trauma. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the committee. I enjoyed our conversation. We had a chance to talk a little bit about the Alaska workforce. I'm looking at an article that just came out, and it cites to the Alaska State Department of Labor and Workforce Development, looking at labor statistics or workforce statistics back in 23. We don't have 24's numbers yet. But right now, non-resident workers in our state make up 23.5% of the workforce. That's a lot. It means we get folks that come to us from other states. When you have 82% of your communities that are not connected by road, you can't move as a worker from one village to another village unless you're willing to pay several $100s for each leg of your airplane ticket to get you to another community for work. So we rely on out-of-state workers. In the oil and gas industry, 37.4% of the workers were non-residents. In the mining industry, non-residents accounted for 41.6%. In the seafood processing sector, which is significant. It's one of our largest employment and economic drivers in the state, producing more than $5 billion in economic activity. So this is big for us. But what is even bigger is in 2023, 82.8% of the workers were non-resident. We process our seafood in small coastal communities that if they have a population at all, it's maybe 500 people that are there. You cannot run a seafood processing industry when you don't have the workers. And so back to the comment that was made earlier about H-2Bs, this is significant for us. Senator Collins asked about your commitment to issue supplemental visas in a timely manner, but also to the maximum extent allowable. You do have that discretion. You've indicated that you're going to work to that. I'm going to ask you to look specifically to the seafood processing sector. Of all the sectors that are out there, and my friend from Virginia knows full well, seafood is more truly seasonal than so many other sectors. But right now, we're competing, if you will, for these H-2Bs with other sectors like landscapers. Last I checked, you can do landscaping 365 days practically in most parts of the country. The seafood sector in Alaska, you're looking at an industry during the summer, at least when it comes to salmon, where it is literally an 8 to 10 week season. We are the poster child for seasonal workers. I need to know that you will not only support the H-2B visa program, but commit to working with me on legislation to exempt seafood processors from the H-2B visa caps. This is something that we've been trying to work for years. Basically, we've been stalled out by big labor that is so concerned that we are not offering these jobs to people across the country. You can't get an H-2B visa until you have demonstrated that all the efforts that you have made to seek U.S. workers and that none are coming to you. So we had the conversation in my office. It's important to state it here publicly how significant it is. And I need your assurance that you're going to work with us and work with your partners within Homeland Security as well on this critical issue for us.
Yes, ma'am. I will commit to working with you specifically on this issue.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of conversation about apprenticeships, so I'm not going to revisit that, although I did just come from a meeting with the head of the Alaska Military Youth Academy, who was talking about the benefits of going from that exceptional program to hand in glove with the Alaska Works training program so that these young people can see the benefits right then, right there. Maybe I want to be a welder. Maybe I want to be a carpenter, but you take them hand in hand. Last thing I'm going to raise is something in a conversation just yesterday with the head of the building trades. We're talking about childcare. We're talking about childcare because we can talk about a workforce, but if people can't get to the workforce because they can't afford childcare. So I would hope that you're going to prioritize families in the workplace and support incentives for on-site childcare.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. Since his inauguration, President Trump has waged war on public servants, especially federal workers and their unions. The president violated union contracts, including by firing tens of thousands of federal workers, used his fork in the road proposal to strong arm federal workers into resigning and waving away their legal rights and illegally attempting to nullify union contracts ratified in December of 2024 and January of 2025. As Secretary of Labor, will you abide by the terms of collective bargaining agreements between the Department of Labor and federal agency staff unions?
Thank you, Senator. It was nice to visit with you. I know it's been a few weeks since we had that meeting, so I appreciate you being here today. Certainly, the Department of Labor is outside of the NLRB, where collective bargaining is committed and happening, independent of the Department of Labor. So I will, work with your office in determining exactly what it is that you're specifically asking, but outside of the Department of Labor is to protect the American worker. And then, of course, as we overlap, because the Department of Labor expands a little bit more than collective bargaining and unfair labor practices under the NLRB.
But will you advise President Trump and Elon Musk that they must reverse all decisions that violated the contracts that were negotiated between the unions and their agency employer?
Well, certainly my role, if confirmed, is to advise the president on a full picture, and I will be candid on what that full picture looks like, and then work with the White House. And if it aligns with the president's America First agenda, I will be that advisor to him. Yes.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, collective bargaining is not part of his agenda, and that's where the Department of Labor historically has intervened to make sure that those protections are put in place. In 2023, during a House Committee on Education and Workforce markup, you said you can't have a strong union without the presence of the NLRB. On January 27th, President Trump illegally fired NLRB board member Gwen Wilcox in direct violation of the National Labor Relations Act. The NLRB now lacks a quorum and cannot enforce laws meant to protect working people from union busting and other illegal behavior by companies. And last night, President Trump signed an executive order stating the previously independent NLRB must now report to him. And the overall effect of this full-on assault is that President Trump has left workers unprotected with no way to exercise their labor rights. So as Secretary of Labor, you will be the president's top advisor on labor issues. If President Trump called you today and asked if he should reinstate Gwen Wilcox, how would you advise him?
Well, that's a hypothetical, as you know, and I have not been confirmed. But I respect the president's executive authority to run the executive office as he sees fit. He is the one who was elected president by the American people, and he's honoring the promise he made to the American people. If confirmed, I will work on behalf of the president, but I will present him a clear and candid picture with the facts, and we will consult then together. But it is important from the Department of Labor that I give him that full picture.
Yeah, well.
And we have been listening in as you're taking a live look out of Washington, D.C. right now to the Senate nomination hearing for Labor Secretary nominee Lori Chavez DeRemer. And she served as the U.S. representative for Oregon's 5th congressional district from 2023 to 2025. Again, this is President Donald Trump's choice to lead the Department of Labor. And we have been taking commercial breaks for this hearing. So I did want to pop up this QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you would like to watch this uninterrupted on our YouTube, if you just open up the camera app on your phone and hold up to the screen and tap, it should take you right to our YouTube channel where, again, you can watch this in entirety without commercial break. We are going to go away for our final break of this hour here on Live Now from Fox. Thank you so much for watching. We will be right back.
Welcome to a moment of calmness from One A Day. Wait. Don't zone out yet. One A Day multivitamins help provide nutritional support for your well-being as part of a healthy lifestyle. So whether you're navigating a busy day or seeking quiet reflection, One A Day vitamins are here for you. Choose clarity, choose wellness. Choose One A Day multivitamins. Science that matters for nutritional support. Grab your One A Day vitamins at your favorite retailer today.
Welcome in here to Live Now from Fox. I do want to share this live image with you into our newsroom. This is a protest happening right now in New York City over Mayor Eric Adams as He is going to be facing a judge over corruption charges a little bit later today. This comes after we brought you that news yesterday that U.S. District Judge Dale Ho, who was an appointee of President Joe Biden, ordered him to appear at a hearing today, again, set to start at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Anything we get on that, we will bring to you here, as we always do. In the meantime, I do want to head back to Capitol Hill, where we have been listening in here to the Senate hearing for Labor Secretary nominee Lori Chavez DeRemer. On the other side of this will be my colleague, Karel Lahara. You're watching live now from Fox.
I understand some of the senators in the guest visa program on the immediacy of certain industries. But as a whole, we want to make sure that we're always investing in the American worker first, that we want to be one of the strongest economies in the union and in the world. So we can be on a level to compete with our, maybe our foreign adversaries when we're talking about China. But what's important to the president and important to me and how we align is making sure that we're putting the American worker first and that they have the opportunities to earn and be at those jobs as they see fit, and the Department of Labor to support them in that investment in that those industries.
Is it fair to say that a tough border policy that cracks down on illegal immigration, that stops the flow of mass illegal immigration across our border, stops the work permits being given to illegal immigrants, this is pro-worker. This helps American workers maintain their wages and maintain their jobs. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Let me ask you about some of the children who came across the border, were trafficked across the border in the last administration. 520,000 of them, to be precise, unaccompanied children trafficked across the border, hundreds of thousands of them lost, and now being exploited by companies like Tyson's Food, for example. Let me just give you an example of bad corporate behavior. Tyson's Food has closed down 2 major plants in my state, the state of Missouri, just in the last year and a half. They have canceled contracts with farmers. They have put thousands of workers in my state out of business. And yet, we know from the investigations done by the New York Times and others that they have huge numbers of illegal child labor in their supply chains. In their factories, they are putting children who are trafficked here to work. So they're firing American workers, but they are exploiting child workers. Will you go after companies like Tyson's and anyone else who would violate our labor laws and exploit children while they are firing American workers?
Yes, that's an important remit under the Department of Labor, as you know, to protect and not exploit all workers, but certainly child labor should not be accepted by anybody in America. And the Department of Labor has the enforcement capability to double down if they knowingly are breaking the law and exploiting children in their factories.
I think we've got to make the penalties even tougher. Senator Booker and I have bipartisan legislation to do that. And again, it is pro-worker to say we're going to protect Americans who are working legally, and we're not going to allow children to be exploited in this country, or people trafficked into this country to be exploited for the purpose of profits by these mega corporations.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator also Brooks.
Thank you. Good morning, Mrs. Chavez DeRemer. And I want to first of all congratulate you and your family on your nomination. And to begin by saying Maryland, the workers that we're talking about today, Maryland has the highest per capita share of federal workers in the country. So the people that we're talking about are my constituents by and large, and they are reeling from this administration's mass firings. Now, when we had our conversation last week, and I know that it was reinforced today, you assured me that you would abide by the law, that even if encouraged to break the law, you said that you commit to following the law. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Now, do you believe that a collective bargaining agreement is enforceable under the law?
Yes.
And if I can ask you, are you aware of the statute which recognizes the right of federal employees to engage in collective bargaining?
I don't know the statute number, so.
It's Title VII of the Civil Service Reform Act. But what I can tell you is that statute, are you aware of that statute or any statute that limits the binding nature of a collective bargaining agreement based on when it was signed?
I'm not an attorney, as you know, and so I would like to
But you would
for this
be,
a
you
little
would
bit
be in
more.
charge of
Yes.
enforcing the law. So if it is the law
Yes. I
that
will.
there is no statute that limits the binding nature of a collective bargaining agreement, then you would enforce that collective bargaining agreement.
I will fully and fairly enforce the law if.
Now, I
confirmed.
want to tell you that President Trump has canceled what he has called as lame duck collective bargaining agreements. And I want to ask you whether there is, what statute there is that you believe would give the president the authority to cancel or void approved union contracts certified during a lame duck.
I'm not familiar and I cannot weigh in on any specific statute that you're asking me about.
But again, if it is the case, and it is, that there is no statute that allows you to set aside a collective bargaining agreement, there's no time limit, would you enforce that collective bargaining agreement pursuant to the law?
Again, Senator, being not familiar specifically, I would certainly want to, discuss this with the solicitors at the Department of Labor if confirmed, just to make sure that I am on the same page without committing to exactly.
Well, no, but
what you're
once it's
referring to.
confirmed for you that it's the law, you have committed that you will enforce the law.
I'm committed to always fully and fairly enforce the law, and I will work with the solicitors of the Department of Labor to make sure before I weigh in specifically on this specific that you're talking about.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Now, President Trump made some, I would call it troubling and shameful comments after the devastating fatal plane crash that occurred here in Washington, D.C. I'm sure you're aware of that plane crash.
Yes, ma'am.
And he blamed at the time, while the bodies were still in the water, many of them were children, he took that moment to blame the incident on Federal Aviation Administration hiring people with intellectual and mental health disabilities. Again, while the recovery efforts were going, do you agree with the president's comments?
Senator, I cannot comment on what the president says or does not say. I support the president in this agenda that he is moving forward with.
No.
And so
The
for
question
me
is not
to-
his agenda.
I
Do you agree
understand.
that with the comment that hiring people with intellectual and mental health disabilities was the reason do you agree with the comment that that was the cause?
I have not had a conversation with the president on this, and I cannot weigh in and speak to that any further.
Okay, want to make you aware that the same hiring language that appeared on the Federal Aviation Administration's website under President Biden are also there during President Trump's first administration as well. So nothing has changed in terms of the hiring practices. But should workers with disabilities be allowed to work
Absolutely.
at FAA? Okay. Now, in an email that was sent out across the government through OPM, it classified it. It used language that, quote, said that their goal was to move from their lower productivity jobs in the public sector to higher productivity jobs in the private sector. Do you agree that public sector jobs are low productivity jobs?
Again,
No, this is not
unless-
hypothetical. This
But
was,
unless we determine what those are, it's hard for me to, if just putting it all in one size fits all, it's hard for me to comment on that. What's
no. It's
productivity or high
a yes or no.
productivity?
Do you believe that public sector jobs are, quote, low productivity jobs? Is that your opinion?
On its face, no. No.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
All right,
you.
I yield.
Thank you, Senator. Also Brooks, our senator from Kansas, who's a little humbler this week than he was 2 weeks ago. So
Chairman, I hadn't even thought about that issue for about 3 minutes, but I am serving lunch today to the junior senator from Pennsylvania.
And Senator Blunt Richardson notices that you're wearing Philadelphia Eagle colors. So
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. All right. Well, welcome, Congressman. Thank you for being here today. I'm so grateful for President Trump nominating you.
Thank you.
I think when he did this, it was certainly a shout out to the hardworking men and women across this country. Based upon your resume, the work you've done, that you certainly have been a person committed to, again, those hardworking men and women across the country, union or non-union workers. Those are people that President Trump supports, and we want them to be successful. We want you to be successful, and I think you're going to be a great representative at the table. Represent him as we're going forward. I want to talk about workplace development for a second. Though unemployment is relatively low, supposedly, our participation rate isn't as good. And I think there's an opportunity there to get people back in the workforce. And if they don't have the skills, the education to do that, then let's help them out. I see there's so many great opportunities, our community colleges, our technical colleges, the unions, apprenticeships, all those pieces are out there. What can we do? What can you do to help support them and help them be successful?
Thank you, Senator Marshall, and I'm sorry that the chairman is being so mean to you in the first few minutes of you being here. But again, it was great meeting with you because we had that conversation about workforce development and workforce investment in our communities and how it can differ oftentimes in a metro area versus a rural area and all of the above. And how you mentioned to me your family in the local community colleges. I took Clackamas Community College right outside in Clackamas County, right from Happy Valley, and how important that was for the community as a whole. And from the Department of Labor, I couldn't, again, be more prideful that I had served on education and workforce on the WIOA reauthorization. And while it didn't make it through, I hope Congress, if the president sees that this is important, that Congress will take this back up for the reinvestment into our young people so that they can be skilled and reskilled in our respective states. I can't wait to come out and visit. And I think I've mentioned this, a couple senators, coming out to all 50 states would be amazing to really learn how the labor laws are affecting your respective states and the investment in the workforce. So I commit to you that I will work hard for the Department of Labor and the agencies within the Department of Labor to make sure that our young people are ready to go in the workforce. And I also know we talked about the average age of a community college entrance is 27 years old. Sometimes people are looking to upskill or get another certificate so they can stay in their communities where they're raising their families, and that's their investment. So I look forward to making this wholeheartedly a pillar of the Department of Labor is workforce investment and development.
More flexibility in the Pell Grants would be a step forward.
And we worked on that also in workforce and sponsored that bill. We did it for pilots, young pilots, but certainly that was important.
What about how can you better work with state agencies?
Well, oftentimes the Department of Labor and the federal state partnership is key and sometimes forgotten. I think one of the areas that we can look together is unemployment insurance was talked about over the last several years, and how we can be a better federal partner, give them the tools that they need, the state partners, in order to develop their workforces and make sure that they have people who are in the workforce who want to stay in the workforce and not pick up and leave. And again, invite people back. So many people have left the workforce, even to the search of a job, and we want to make sure that those people are coming back from full force.
I want to take a moment and talk about the franchise model again. And I heard the chairman's opening remarks or questions kind of touched on this, but I want to go back there. In my mind, what the franchise model has done is helped many people achieve their American dream of owning their own business and being successful too.
That's right.
And I think it's been a great opportunity, especially for women, for minorities, for veterans as well. And we have to work on this balance. I want the unions to be successful. I want the franchises to be successful as well. How do we achieve that balance? Any thoughts on where's the win-win opportunity when it comes to that issue?
Well, a lot of times the reference is to the gig economy and understanding the franchise model as well. And I support that the efforts of, the franchise model as it does allow the flexibility for business owners to determine, do they want to be in business for themselves? Do they want to, work for somebody else? But I think the only change that can be talked about today that will work in all of these is everybody has to have that voice and understanding at the table. One of the reasons the president nominated me, and then it's kind of been mentioned, but it's not always that we're going to agree on both sides, but we're going to be understood, that they will have a voice. That's the difference this time, that I want everybody at that table to have that voice and what is valuable to them and their membership or them and their employees or a business owner when they're struggling. Compliance is important, education of compliance. And then also, that we can protect all American workers. There's a continuum from the first day that we have our first job all the way through retirement. Wherever a worker is or a retiree is on that continuum, they should be respected for the hard work that they've put in. I can tell you, bringing everybody at the table is going to do just that and reinforce the things that we care about in our respective states. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Chavez-DeRemer. I enjoyed our conversation last week and appreciate your enthusiasm. I thought it'd start with just a quick answer, a quick question, that if you track the shrinking of the middle class, which we've seen in this country over about the last 60 years, I think it's safe to say, it almost exactly tracks the reductions in unionized labor in terms of as a percentage of the workforce. They track almost perfectly. Do you agree that we want to get more workers in unions as a method to expand the middle class? Is that a worthy goal?
Well, I think the goal is the option. If people choose to organize, they should have a free and fair right to organize. And if they choose not to, they should also have that right.
But don't we want to have more? Isn't the country better off with more working people getting paid better wages? And really, the only way that generally happens is through union representation.
Well, again, supportive of both sides of the table is going to be important. If an employee chooses that they want to be in a union, or they have the right to do so. And the same if they choose not to. It was just mentioned on the other side about, what does it look like for the franchise model or the independent contractor model. So I think the flexibility and the conversation is what's key here. And is there room for both? I believe there is. The president certainly believes there is, because this is the new direction of where oftentimes we've had the extremes arguing. If we keep the American worker first and foremost, we're going to come to the center of that table and I think develop exactly what you're talking about, keeping more of their hard-earned dollars.
I appreciate that. And again, the ultimate goal, we want to expand the middle class. I appreciate your small business background as a small business person myself in a past life. I think that will be invaluable. We met last week with some of the leadership from the Cherry Creek School District in South Metro Denver, one of many that has innovative apprenticeship systems they put in place, and they're training teachers, HVAC technicians, engineers, aerospace manufacturers, go down the list, healthcare workers of various sorts. And this is just one of many programs we've got in Colorado. Now, the president's proposed funding freezes are going to prevent us from keeping many of these programs running in our state, and I think taking valuable opportunities away from the kids. How can you, as secretary, assuming you get approved, how can you protect these programs against attempts to unilaterally, and I think in some cases unlawfully, claw back the federal funding from these programs?
Well, I think the key here is going to be presenting to the president. Again, I mentioned visiting and understanding exactly what's happening in Colorado and all the respective states, and presenting to the president as his advisor what's happening on the ground. That's what he wants to see, a candid, clear, concise picture, so that as we move forward in the America First agenda, that we're going to be supporting the American worker. That is first and foremost in his agenda. We're aligned in that. That's the conversation that we had, is that he wants to support the American worker. And so I will present to him the clear facts from all of the respective states.
Okay. Back to youth apprenticeships, which, as you know, my last 6 years as governor, that's what I spent a lot of time on. And I look at it as one of the great gaps that 65 to 70% of our kids aren't going to get a 4-year degree. And we have done a piss poor job of giving them the tools to acquire the skills necessary to have, the American dream. Is there ways that we can look at to expand apprenticeship programs, youth apprenticeship programs? So I'm not just talking about 18 and over. I'm talking about 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids who could want to work in an accounting firm or an advanced manufacturing or a hospital, whatever. How can you see us expanding that through your tenure at the Department of Education?
Well, I think we can certainly agree that, and you heard the conversation about, speaking to even our youngest, our junior high, our middle school kids, all the way up into high school. But I would like to work with your office and, as if confirmed, get into the Department of Labor, really expand and explore what can be done. But if I could work with your office specifically on this and get to know it a little bit better, I would like to have that conversation with you.
No, I will take that and we'll follow up on that. We'll get you out to Colorado. A lot of the records, on February 5th, DOJ went to the Department of Labor and demanded that certain federal employees' information be released. And I think there's a lot of retirement account, private information. We haven't seen, I haven't seen any disclosure of how those records are going to be used. And I think, what are the reassurances that the American people have that those are still safely secure?
Well, I haven't seen them either because I have not been confirmed, as you all know. I have not been read in onto what is happening with DOJ in the Department of Labor. But if confirmed, that'll be the first thing I do, is make sure that I'm briefed on it and made aware of everything that's happening. So I don't have that answer for you because I don't know what's been happening either.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
We're listening here to the Senate hearing to confirm former Representative Lori Chavez DeRemer. She has been picked by President Donald Trump to lead the Department of Labor. Thank you all for joining us here at Live Now from Fox on this Wednesday, February 19th. My name is Karal Lahara, and I'll be with you throughout the next several hours, continuing to guide you through the day's top stories, also showcasing live events from around the world. We do want to step away for our first commercial break of this hour. When we come back, we're going to pivot from that Senate hearing, and we're going to touch on one of these other major headlines that we have been following, the breaking news that we brought to you just yesterday. Today, New York City Mayor Eric Adams is going to be appearing before a judge, and they will decide on whether they will dismiss corruption charges against him. We'll have the latest when we come back. Welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. So Live Now, look back out there and you can see downtown Manhattan over in New York City, because as I mentioned before the break, we want to tackle one of these big breaking news stories that we brought to you just yesterday. Later on today, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, he's going to be before a judge facing some corruption charges. Now, the judge was nominated by former President Joe Biden, is scheduled today's hearing after 3 Trump administration lawyers from Washington made the dismissal request on Friday. Manhattan's top federal prosecutor resigned after she refused an order to do so. Now, Fox 5's Arthur Sheehan is outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan, where it will all go down today. Arthur, what can you tell us?
Hey there. So all eyes are on this courtroom at 2 o'clock Eastern. Both parties are expected to appear before Judge Dale Ho. He wants them on the record making arguments about why they are asking for the prosecution of this corruption case to be dropped. Obviously, this request from the judge, or this order from the judge to come and make these arguments, was made after the acting U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon resigned in protest, but not before sending a letter to Washington saying that this was a quid pro quo, that Adams was getting the charges dropped in exchange for helping carrying out the agenda of the Trump administration. That is a charge that the mayor denies. He said there is no quid pro quo. He also denies any wrongdoing in relation to the corruption charges. Now, this has been a very complicated case, so we put together a timeline to catch everybody up on everything that led up to today.
Mayor Eric Adams' legal troubles began long before his first court appearance. According to the 5-count indictment against him, back in 2015, he established relationships with Turkish officials. Between October 2016 and 2017, he traveled to the country 3 times, allegedly accepting pricey tickets and luxury hotel stays in exchange for influence back in New York City. The swanky upgrades and expensive favors allegedly lasted through 2020. And in that year, Adams is accused of soliciting and receiving straw donations to circumvent the city's campaign finance rules. Fast forward to September of 2021, when the mayor allegedly put pressure on the FDNY to fast-track the opening of a new Turkish skyscraper on the east side, a building that was not up to code and failed inspection. It was in November of 2023 when the feds ramped up their investigation, raiding the home of Adams' aide, Brianna Suggs, and seizing the mayor's electronic devices. In 2024, the FBI raided the home of even more of his top advisors, including Winnie Greco. Fast forward to July of 2024, when the mayor is officially served grand jury subpoenas. And from that point forward, one aide after the next resigns, from the police commissioner to his chief counsel to the school's chancellor. And in September, the federal indictment against the mayor is unsealed.
I've done nothing wrong. Time will prove that.
While the mayor pled not guilty and denies any wrongdoing, the calls for him to resign start getting louder.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Then Trump wins the presidential election. It's November, which would set off a number of meetings, including Adams flying down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump. And days later, Adams cancels appearances at Martin Luther King events in New York City to attend Trump's inauguration and ends up watching it from an overflow room. His absence on the profound holiday was noticed.
Some that should be here celebrating Dr. King with us in this room have chosen to go to Washington to celebrate Felon 47.
On February 10th, a major legal and political firestorm will be sparked as the Justice Department in Washington orders prosecutors in the Southern District of New York to dismiss Adams's corruption case without prejudice, meaning it could be brought up against Adams in the future. The letter said the case was hindering Adams's ability to do his job, including addressing the immigration crisis. But the acting U.S. attorney in New York, Danielle Sassoon, a Trump appointee, refuses to sign off on dropping that case, claiming what was happening was a quid pro quo, where charges would be dropped in exchange for Adams's cooperation with the Trump administration. Sassoon would resign rather than sign off on the order. 6 other federal prosecutors joined her and quit. Protests begin around the city, and high-profile Democrats start saying it is time for Adams to step down. Meanwhile, the mayor continues to appear at churches where he has support, repeating his line that instead of stepping down, he intends to step up and weather the storm.
We're straight ahead. We're focused.
But the political turbulence would soon develop into a perfect storm, as half the deputy mayors would hand in their resignations on the same day, Monday, February 17th. Citing they could no longer be true to their oaths to serve New Yorkers and their families. The 4 defections lead many to point out the mayor had, by then, lost the trust of his own staff. And by that night, Governor Kathy Hochul, who has the constitutional power to remove Adams from office, releases a statement calling on key leaders to meet with her, saying the alleged conduct in the 2 weeks leading up to this point is, quote, troubling and cannot be ignored. The next day, the meetings with various leaders takes place at the governor's office in Midtown Manhattan.
And that brings us to today at 2 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time. Both parties are expected to appear in court and to testify before Judge Ho, explaining why they want the case dropped. Legal experts say one thing that's missing in this is somebody who's going to be in there to testify on behalf of the people and what this means for New Yorkers, because they point out that right now, both prosecutors and the defendant in the case are aligned in this case. As for what happens now after the testimony, some are wondering if the judge will render a decision right away. The people that we've talked to say that that is incredibly unlikely, that he'll probably take all this information, process it, and then render a decision. They say this is a process that could take days, if not weeks. Obviously, it is something that the governor in New York is also waiting on. So there's a lot of pressure in this case. That's the latest from here in Manhattan, in New York. We go back to you, Corral.
Arthur Tian down there again for Fox 5 in New York. Thank you so much for that comprehensive report, because it has been such a long time coming to this day for the New York City mayor. We'll check in soon.
You got it.
Let's continue on with more of these live pictures that we do have out here on this Wednesday. But again, that is one of the biggest stories that we are going to continue to follow up, because as you just saw from that report from Arthur Chian, it's been a long time coming, several months in the making. And now we'll have to wait and see what the judge decides today during that court appearance for Mayor Adams. We're going to step away for another brief commercial break here at Live Now from Fox, but we still have a lot more to get to. Couple of these live pictures that I want to filter through. This first one is a protest, people gathering at this rally to protest against DOJ, to protest against some of these federal budget cuts. That is happening outside in Washington, D.C., I do believe, outside the research and academics of the HHS. So that is one of the live pictures that we do have. And then also this in Washington, D.C. as well. We're waiting for the Senate. They are voting to confirm whether Kelly Loeffler will be the next SBA administrator. All this and more when we come back. Welcome back into Live Now from Fox, where we want to keep it moving with more of these live images that we are getting. So we're heading out to Washington, D.C. and taking you to this rally and a protest that I previewed just before that last commercial break. We are seeing several people here gathering, protesting against DOJ and Elon Musk for what they're saying are harmful federal budget cuts. Let's listen in.
Studying all populations equally for all problems, which is neither scientifically reasonable nor economically efficient. Not all populations are at the same risk for the same outcomes. Why would or should we allocate resources to studying or trying to prevent the spread of HIV amongst elderly white women when the risk of HIV transmission is virtually zero? Or why would we study pregnancy outcomes in straight men? Or what is the point of studying the efficacy of novel prostate cancer in females? Diversity of background, experiences, and thought only strengthens research because it improves the number of eyes, angles, and perspectives on a problem. It causes us to reconsider issues and pose new and better questions. It pushes the field forward and allows for new answers and solutions to be found. Cuts to scientific research present no real benefits and all but guarantee preventable costs to human life.
Fund, don't freeze! 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 Fund, don't freeze!
All right, all right, all right.
Yeah!
Next up, we have Kaylin Price. She is a neuroscience graduate worker at the newly formed George Washington University 2. George Washington University Grad Workers United.
Yeah!
Part of SEIU Local 500.
What's up, everybody? It is such an honor to be here. My name is Kaylin Price. I'm a neuroscience graduate student, graduate worker with GWU2. So where are my GWU2 folks? We just won our election, 99.4% yes. Graduate workers are ready to work not just for science, but for the betterment of all mankind by doing research. We are organized because you have to be organized. You have to out-organize fascism. We are here with the SEIU Local 500 with amazing support, solidarity with all of the other workers here. And it is important that we understand exactly what is at stake right now. I am a proud HBCU educated scientist from North Carolina A&T State University, where I got my undergraduate degree in biology. And I know exactly what it means to do work that is great work with less than what you should have. My brilliant current advisor put it like this: cutting indirect costs is like telling a football team to do their work with only the players and the coach. No lights for the field, no physical therapist for the players, no water for the showers. Just tell them, get out there and do it. What's the problem? You've got to think about what they're telling you and why they're misleading you. They want you to be angry and misinformed, incensed and ignorant. They want you, Trump and his unelected billionaire backers, want you to look at the people like us making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, working late nights through the weekends because we believe that much in the work that we do as the enemy. We need 2 and 3 roommates to keep doing work that we do because we believe it's that important. We are not the enemy. Our colleagues that we are also organizing with, who keep the fume hoods running, who keep the electricity running, are not your enemy. They're your neighbors, they're your friends, and they are helping to make sure that the work that we do is possible. It isn't just enough to have a good idea. You need a building to do it in. You need lights. You need clean water. You need all of the materials that keep a facility running. So saying facility and administration like it's a bad word is ignorant. It is unacceptable that we have to be out here begging for money that is already guaranteed. What they are doing is theft. They are stealing from you, from me, and it's crazy that it's tax season. I'm not even making that much, and I'm watching it go away. They want to fund $18 billion in government contracts to Elon Musk. But they're telling us that the work that we do is bloat and excess. So I want to leave you with a chant. More funding, not less. End research funding theft. More funding, not less. End research funding theft. More funding, not less. End research funding theft. Keep coming out here. Keep telling people what you do and why it's important. Let people know that we cannot survive as a society without the work that scientists, clinicians, and educators do every single day.
All right, and now we have heard from some of our workers here at NIH, down the street at George Washington University, up in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins, and now we will hear from Senator of our great state of Maryland, a champion for higher education and for labor, Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Thank you, great patriots all. Are we going to shut down the illegal Elon Musk takeover of the government? You bet we are. We're going to fight this in the courts. We're going to fight this in the Congress, and there can be no business as usual in the Congress. And we're going to fight this in gatherings like this all over the country, because we need to shut down this illegal operation. I want to thank all of you. All of you are dedicated to protecting the public health. All of you are dedicated to making sure that we do the medical research that saves lives. And there's no sugarcoating this. These cuts will kill more Americans. When you conduct research into cancer, into diabetes, into Alzheimer's, into heart disease, and into all the other diseases that plague American families, you are saving lives. And taking that away will result in more Americans dying early and more American suffering. Are we going to let that happen? No! Hell no! So what is this all about? What is this all about? It is about the great betrayal by Donald Trump. Look, on the campaign trail, what did he say he would do? He said he was going to cut prices. He said he was going to look out for working people. But as soon as he was sworn in, he began that great betrayal. He ended up slashing important services like medical research that help every American family to make way for and pay for what the next step they're going to take is, which is tax cuts for very wealthy Americans at the expense of everybody else. Are we going to let that happen? And who did he bring in to do his dirty work? Elon Musk. Elon Musk. So this is the most corrupt bargain in American history. Elon Musk spent $280 million to elect Donald Trump. And Donald Trump turned around and gave the keys to federal agencies to Elon Musk. And make no mistake, and you know this has nothing to do with greater government efficiency. Nothing. This has everything to do to taking over the reins of government to serve the already powerful and to slash public services that help every American to make more room for tax cuts for Elon Musk. That is what this corrupt bargain is all about. Are we going to shut it down? Yeah! We're going to shut it down because we're going to get the story out there to every American. They, as you said, they want all of us to be quiet. They want us to just suck it up. Are we going to suck it up? No! Hell no. So what this is about is not lowering prices and not helping working people. This is about enacting Project 2025. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I dare say you do remember that when he was on the campaign trail and when he was asked about Project 2025, Donald Trump's like, I don't know what that is. Who are those people? That was the big lie. That was the big lie. And why did he pretend to know nothing about it? Because he knew how unpopular it is to enact those provisions. But that is, in fact, what they're doing. They're not doing what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail. He's enacting Project 2025, which he said he knew nothing about. And in fact, Russ Vought is the guy who co-authored Project 2025, and he is now in the cockpit of the White House when it comes to federal agencies. So are we going to shut down Project 2025? Yeah! Because, you know, if you're about creating more efficiency, you don't fire all the IGs, first of all, do you? I mean, the IGs are there to look out for waste, fraud, and abuse. So firing the IGs actually clears the way for more corruption. So we can shut down everything we can in order to make sure that we shut down the Elon Musk operation. I want to thank all of you for doing that, because at the end of the day, you are here to save lives. We need to make sure we get it done. Thank you all very, very much for what you do.
We're taking a live look here at a rally being held. You're seeing federal workers, union leaders, and impacted community members rallying outside the headquarters of the Department of Health and Human Services to protest against DOJ and Elon Musk's take on the public service sector, and now within President Trump's administration. A couple of different live looks on your screen as well. Staying in Washington, D.C., you have this first one as the Senate continues to vote on whether to confirm Kelly Loeffler as the new administrator for the Small Business Administration. And then also we had this live look over downtown Manhattan in New York City. We are expecting New York City Mayor Eric Adams to appear before a judge today on corruption charges. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Live Now from Fox, where we do focus on live events as they are happening in real time. And we're heading back out to Washington, D.C. as we continue to see this rally being held outside of the headquarters of the Department of Health and Human Services, as several people turning out here to protest against DOJ and Elon Musk.
NIH Fellows United. And frankly, I don't want to be here. I want to be in my lab focusing on my research. But I can't be building community with queer scientists that I have been This is because on January 21st, the current administration instituted a ban on DEIA positions and programs in the federal government. Overnight, my group's website was taken down and colleagues I'd worked beside for years were out of a job. 2 years of our blood, sweat, and tears, building networks, fostering community, and many more of history before us, reduced to broken links and uncertainty. In the wake of such a clear attack on my queer colleagues, how can any of us go about our day-to-day work? Through community, we have found a way. Despite bans on presenting our research, halts on funding, and direct attacks on our identities, we have passed candidacy exams, been accepted to graduate school, all while raising our voices to protect our fellow scientists. While some may administration's actions are a bold display of strength, I think they're a clear admission of fear. This administration knows the power we have when we stand together, and that's why they're trying to undermine us. You can eliminate DEIA. You can stall our research, but we are not going anywhere. We will work together to protect every single one of us. Fellow organizers, do not give them the satisfaction of succumbing to the overwhelm. Keep raising your voices. Keep excelling at what you do and remind them why they should fear our power.
Hello, my name is Connor Phillips, and I'm with NIH Fellows United. As you've heard from others today, the NIH is what makes the U.S. the world leader in biomedical research. The best scientists come here because we can solve the world's most challenging problems in health. You may not be able to tell by looking at me, but I have cerebral palsy. I am this healthy because of therapies developed in the U.S. that helped rewire my brain after a stroke, allowing me to live my fullest life. My experience inspired me to become a scientist at the NIH, where I have developed new therapies to improve the lives of other children with cerebral palsy and help develop a new understanding of how the brain functions. Now, as a result of these cuts from the Trump administration, I am prevented from continuing this research, even as an unpaid volunteer. When I hear people say these cuts are making our government more efficient, I'm at a loss. How can that be true when I'm prevented from working for free? As someone who hopes to be a great scientist one day, I'm questioning whether that will be still possible in the United States. If this story speaks to you, call your